Hey everyone, my name's Tomato Anus, also known as Don't Capitalize My Name, also known as Churro Pequeño, and this is an any % survival speedrun of Subnautica. This run is performed by Eclypsed, the current world record holder for this category, who also helped me write the script to make sure that I didn't done goof. If you'd prefer to watch either this run without commentary or Eclypsed's current world record, they're both linked in the description. Additionally, this is an any % run, so glitches are allowed, but if you'd prefer to watch a glitchless run, I've linked the current glitchless record by Cinnamon Cookies in the description as well. If you've never played Subnautica before, it's an open world survival action adventure game set on an ocean planet. We've crash landed on this planet, and the game's gameplay loop consists of collecting resources, interacting with wildlife, and building things like tools, bases, and submersibles, with our overall goal being to escape the planet. This run is done on the survival difficulty, which is the game's default mode where we have to manage health, hunger, thirst, and oxygen, and if we die, then we respawn, but with certain items removed from our inventory. In order to complete our overall goal of escaping the planet, we have a few things we need to accomplish, but they're sort of spoilers to just reveal right up front. This may seem antithetical to speedrun videos, but I like to try to avoid spoiling games unless it's absolutely necessary to understand what's happening. For these purposes, certain things on our to-do list this run are censored. When we get to the point where we talk about these items, I'll provide a spoiler warning for spoiler avoiders to mute the video for a bit so you can still enjoy the video without having the details of the plot spoiled. There will be visual gameplay spoilers throughout the run though, so you have been warned. With that all being covered, let's get into the—
Hey Chicago guy, I'm home from my safari. Had to swim at the police station on the way back. You would not believe the trip.
Hey Minnesota guy, glad you're home. Try my shake.
Oh, okay.
It's a mix of parsley and beef.
What? Why would you make this?
Mainly to see if I could.
That's fair. Boy, I was really looking forward to trying that. I haven't eaten in months, so it seemed like the perfect thing to tie me over to dinner, don't you know?
You should have a midday square then.
Oh, I've heard of these. They're the first functional chocolate bar, right? Made entirely out of ingredients that are raw, vegan, gluten-free, and organic?
Yeah, plus they taste so much better than protein bars and other snack bars, and I never feel bad after eating them like I do with a lot of snack foods.
It's not going to ruin my appetite or anything, right? I want to make tater tot hot dish for Din Din.
Nah, midday squares were made to be a healthy craving killer to tie you over for a few hours.
Wait, so they're a snack food designed to help people cut hunger and cravings between meals, right?
Yep, and they're made with real chocolate and taste like chocolate.
Chocolate.
Wait, did you fit that whole thing in your mouth? Dude, you're gonna choke.
No, I'm fine.
Oh, okay then. Click the link in the description or use code TOMATOANUS at checkout to get 15% off your midday squares order.
Wait, what did you say?
Click the link in the description or use code TOMATOANUS at checkout to get 15% off your midday squares order.
Oh yeah,
Wait, did you not hear me again? I can just repeat it again. You don't have to pretend like you heard me and understand.
Man, it's good to be home. I love living in Minnesota.
And I love living in Chicago.
And we love living together.
Before starting the run proper, there's a bit more prerequisite info we need to go over. First is that the run is done on a downpatched version of the game, with the patch being from September 2018. In the game's speedrun history, it used to be more important for the game to be downpatched, but it's not as important nowadays aside from two things being doable on this patch but not later ones. Secondly, the keybinds that Eclypsed uses are a bit different than standard. Subnautica gives you the option to bind two keys to one action, so Eclypsed plays with both the left mouse button and scrolling down bound to breaking rocks, and both the right mouse button and scrolling up bound to moving items in inventory and storage screens. This lets him do things like break rocks and pick up a ton of items quickly by scrolling to spam inputs, and also spam inputs to interact with multiple things in a single sweep of the camera. The last thing we need to go over before the run is resources and how they're dropped. In short, the speedrun of this game is a lot of resource collection and resource management. There's a total amount of each resource that we need to collect during the run, and we'll be keeping track of how much we have of each resource compared to how much we need. Throughout the run, Eclypsed will be collecting resources, crafting things with them, and mentally keeping track of how many of each resource he's collected. Resources are either harvested from deposits of said resource, oftentimes using a tool to do so, or harvested from the planet's flora and fauna. Some resources, though, are available for collection from something called a harvesting node. Harvesting nodes are mineral deposits holding resources that can be broken by the player's hands rather than having to use a tool, and when broken, give you one of several items. The game determines what item to give you when you break a harvesting node by way of something called a resource bucket. Think of resource buckets as exactly what they sound like, a bucket that holds resources. Each type of harvesting node has its own resource bucket, and whenever you harvest a node, a resource is drawn from that node's bucket and that resource is dropped for you. There's a few different kinds of resource buckets harvested in the run, one for every type of harvesting node that we break, and like I said a moment ago, the buckets have a chance to drop one of several resources. The easiest way to explain how it's chosen which resource is dropped is with an example, so let's use limestone outcrops first. The way limestone outcrops are set up is for every 2 harvested you get 1 titanium and 1 copper ore. The first time you harvest a limestone outcrop, you have a 50-50 chance of getting either titanium or copper ore, and whichever one you get, then the next limestone outcrop you harvest, you're guaranteed to get the other. This empties the limestone outcrop bucket, causing it to refill with a new titanium and copper ore. The next time you harvest a limestone outcrop then, it's a 50-50 chance of getting titanium or copper ore, with whatever is chosen then being removed from the bucket until the bucket is emptied and then refilled again. Limestone outcrops are the simple one, with it being just 1 copper ore and 1 titanium for every 2 pulls, but buckets like the sandstone outcrop are a bit more complicated. The sandstone outcrop bucket begins with 2 gold, 3 silver ore, and 3 lead starting in it, making for a total of 8 resources in the bucket. In your first 4 harvests of this bucket, you're guaranteed to get at least 1 silver ore, at least 1 lead, and exactly 1 gold. In the final 4 picks, you're then free to get any of the remaining resources in the bucket until the bucket is emptied, at which point it's refilled with the starting combination again. Alright, with that all being covered, we can get into the run. Eclypsed begins by pressing and holding escape to get through the press any button prompt, and also skip the intro cutscene, with the run officially beginning on the first frame of gameplay. He then uses the scroll wheel to interact with the medical kit fabricator and exit the hatch in one smooth motion, giving us a first aid kit and putting us in the water. Our first immediate goal is to get at least 1 copper ore, 1 titanium, and 6 acid mushrooms. Right away we grab some nearby metal salvage, which can be turned into 4 titanium, then go into a little cave area to grab acid mushrooms that always spawn here, and break a limestone which nets us a copper. Had the metal salvage not spawned where it did, then we'd have to break a second limestone to get the titanium we need, or if the limestone had dropped titanium, then we'd have to break a second limestone to get the copper. Back at our base, we make a battery using 2 acid mushrooms and a copper ore, then convert the metal salvage into 4 titanium. We then use the battery and a titanium to make a scanner, and since we got the metal salvage and have 3 extra titanium, we use it to make a standard O2 tank. The standard O2 tank increases our oxygen supply from 45 to 75, but coming up is a stretch where Eclypsed will use his oxygen to time out him dying at a specific point. Having the O2 tank equipped would screw up that timing, so we want to leave our life pod before the tank is finished being made on the fabricator, which you can see Eclypsed doing here as soon as he selects to make the tank. There's a bit more going on than Eclypsed just confirming to make the tank and then exiting though, and I mean, you all viewing at home aren't dumb. I know you noticed that he interacts with the life pod storage container before exiting. This is him setting up a glitch referred to as remote storage or ghost storage. For consistency's sake, in this video, we'll just call it ghost storage. So there's a minor delay between when you interact with the life pod storage container and when the inventory screen pops up. Exiting the life pod during this small window interrupts the animation of our inventory being pulled up, causing it to not open. What this does though is the next time that we manually pull up our inventory, we'll be able to remotely access the storage container, letting us deposit or take items from the container from anywhere. This glitch is used all throughout the run, but is something that you have to set up every time to perform. It's not something you set up once and then you're able to use all the time. Also, something worth noting real quick while we're paused is that typically in this game, the fabricator menu doesn't stay open while the fabricator is making something. Usually, the menu fades away and stays gone until whatever item being made is finished, at which point the menu reappears. By holding down the sprint key though, which by default is shift on the keyboard, the menu stays open for us to navigate while the fabricator is fabricating. So once we have ghost storage set up, we make our way to the next point of interest and we swim on the surface of the water since it's 33% faster than swimming underwater. Eclypsed is heading to a giant coral tube that he spawned near, which, speaking of, when you start a new game, you spawn in a random spot inside of a spawning area in the center of the map. Only about 15 to 20% of the potential spawn area is considered to be good, based on proximity to things on the map like the coral tube, and in this run we spawned in an area that's referred to as Clip A, which is Eclypsed's favorite spawn area for reasons we'll cover later. So the coral tube is filled with quartz and limestone, and we need a bunch of those resources for the run, so we're going to collect all of it up until we hit 22 items. 22 is the exact number of items that will be able to fit in our storage container with some other items we're about to grab, so 22 is where we stop. Eclypsed makes his way through the coral tube in kind of a spiral to cover as much ground as possible, and in this run he empties out the coral tube with item grab 21, but he knows there's a chance that outcrops spawn on the edge of the tube, which one did here to make for item 22. He He had just enough oxygen to make it through the tube into the surface without running out, and after refreshing his oxygen, he dives back down into the kelp forest. This is the oxygen refill that we're going to let run out to time out a death. Here we pick up some metal salvage for a reason that will be more clear later. Just remember for now that we picked up some metal salvage in the kelp forest. After grabbing 2 creepvine seed clusters, Eclypsed pulls up his PDA, which activates ghost storage, then deposits the 22 items we got from the coral tube along with the 2 seed clusters we just harvested. So our main mode of transportation in the run will be the Seaglide, but we have to unlock the blueprints for it before we can craft it. To unlock the blueprints, we have to use our scanner to scan 2 Seaglide fragments, which spawn somewhat commonly at this wreck just past the kelp forest. The blueprints don't always spawn in a convenient place, so finding them quickly is a pretty common reset point in speedruns. After scanning the fragments, we run out of oxygen and we have 8 seconds after running out before we die. When you die, you respawn in your last base, which in this case is the life pod, and you lose any items on you that you didn't have on you the last time you were in your base, save for 1 randomly chosen item and any key story items. After spawning, grabbing the O2 tank from earlier, converting the metal salvage into titanium, and grabbing a ton of items, Eclypsed then proceeds to make a series of items which are a battery, copper wire, silicone rubber, 2 glass, lubricant, a survival knife, and the Seaglide. He then dumps most of his items into storage to make space for new stuff, but keeps tools like the knife and Seaglide in his inventory and sets up ghost storage again as he exits the life pod. He'll then be on his way to make a resource gathering loop, namely for quartz and limestone. Eclypsed knows that throughout the run he needs to gather a total of 21 quartz and that so far he's gathered 9, so he needs to get 12 during this resource loop, and you can never really get too many limestone because of how much copper and titanium we need for the run. In addition to quartz and limestone, he just broke 3 sandstone during this loop, netting him 1 silver, 1 lead, and 1 gold. Outside the cave, he slashes 3 table coral with his knife, giving him 3 of the 13 he'll need for the run. He then grabs another metal salvage before swimming a short distance and diving down into a crevasse where he'll grab a handful more quartz and limestone. Down here in the crevasse, Eclypsed will break 3 additional sandstone, which happen to net him 1 more of each of the potential drops. Just a reminder, sandstone can drop gold, lead, and silver and has a bucket size of 8. Since our first 6 drops from the sandstone bucket were 2 of each possible item, that means that the next 2 sandstone we break will give us 1 lead and 1 silver ore, and the bucket will then reset. Our inventory is getting pretty full at this point, so we activate ghost storage and dump as many resources as we can before putting our PDA away and grabbing any resources we come across on our way to exit the cave. Our oxygen supply is running pretty low, but we're close to the life pod and we're holding a ton of resources that we just harvested that we don't want to lose and can't fit into storage, so rather than letting our oxygen run out to spawn back at the life pod, we simply just head back home. Back inside, Eclypsed will make a battery, copper wire, a computer chip, a wiring kit, and put it all together to make a habitat builder, which is one of the last tools we need in the run. It pretty much just lets us build new bases. He'll then turn the metal salvage he grabbed into titanium. Before he exits the life pod with a ghost storage setup, Eclypsed makes sure all his glass is in storage and also picks up as much quartz and titanium as he can while also making sure he has a bit of copper too. When he's outside the life pod, he starts making his way to a specific location where he's going to build a base. Depending on where you spawn in the speedrun, there are different locations where you want to build your base, all with the goal of minimizing travel time later in the run. When Eclypsed goes to place the base, he'll race to place his face in the space between 2 shiitakes. Fuck, that didn't rhyme like I thought it would. So once he's in position to place the base, Eclypsed will aim up and slightly above this coral shell plate right here. This lines up his camera so that when he goes to construct an eye compartment, it'll be placed in the perfect position, slightly clipping into the shell plate. The eye compartment only requires 2 titanium to make, which he has on him, so it's fully constructed pretty quickly. Once it's fully constructed, then the coral shell plate that the compartment was clipping into gets deleted. This is actually the purpose of the setup, to make sure the base was placed in the correct spot so the shell plate is deleted. If the shell plate wasn't deleted, then there's a chance it would cause an unwanted glitch where the right resources don't drop when we go to collect some table coral in a bit. Eclypsed will follow up the eye compartment by building a hatch on the end, which requires just a quartz and 2 titanium to make, which, again, he has on him, so the hatch is completed pretty quickly. He follows this up by attempting to construct an eyeglass compartment perpendicular to the hatch. Having the compartment perpendicular like this makes it so that the exit animation is skipped whenever we leave the base, saving almost a second each time. This compartment requires 2 glass to construct, but we don't have 2 glass on us because if you remember what I said 91 seconds ago, Eclypsed makes sure all his glass is in storage. Don't forget I said this, it's very important. If you forget, then you smell like eggs, and toads, and closet meatloaf, and Eclypsed not having the glass on him to construct this glass compartment is intentional though, because the compartment doesn't actually need to be fully constructed for the exit animation to be skipped, it just needs to be placed for construction. Coupling this with the fact that we need to save that glass for later, it just makes sense to deposit the glass like we did so that it isn't used up here, since the compartment can just sit at 0% completed and the exit animation will be skipped regardless. After he places the compartment, Eclypsed places 2 solar panels on top of the base and makes a mental note that he fully constructed the one closer to the hatch last. This will be important later. In the base, he'll then build a fabricator and use it to make more glass and build a couple lockers while the fabricator fabricates. We haven't gotten all of the quartz we need so far, so we're short on the total amount of glass we need for the run, but that's okay for now. Later in the run, we're going to be making a ton of items, so Eclypsed puts another fabricator on the wall now, which he'll fully construct later when he has the materials for it. That way he can akimbo fabricators when he goes to make everything. After depositing everything into a locker, save for his tools and 2 copper, he heads back outside and under the base to chop some acid mushrooms. Chopping them causes them to kinda explode, which kills us and damages our base, causing it to flood. Because this is the most recent base we've been to, that means it's where we respawn, and we actually spawn inside the base while it's flooding. This makes the game think we're both swimming and walking at the same time and causes their movement speed to add on to one another, making us move roughly 3 times as fast when using the Seaglide. This is a glitch called Super Seaglide, and without it, this run would probably be around 15 minutes longer. Super Seaglide isn't permanent, and you can lose it in a few ways. 2 notable ones are that you lose it if you break the water's surface or if you enter a base that isn't flooded. If you enter a flooded base though, you're fine, you don't lose it. If you do lose it though, which will happen a couple times in the run, then you can get it back super easily by going into a flooded base, deconstructing the hatch, and then reconstructing it real quick. With Super Seaglide set up, Eclypsed heads outside to collect some table coral since he needs 10 more for crafting purposes. These 3 here were destroyed when the acid mushroom blew up. After grabbing the final 2 table coral, he heads down into a cave to grab a ton of resources, including 4 acid mushrooms to round out all of the mushrooms needed for the run. Harvesting this cave is unique to runs where you spawn in the area referred to as Clip A, whereas if you spawn in the area called Clip C, you harvest a different cave that has 3 fewer sandstones. The 3 extra sandstone you get with the Clip A spawn is the reason why Eclypsed prefers Clip A runs to Clip C runs, since the 3 extra sandstone give him a chance to get his 3rd gold of the run early, meaning that he can finish making his 2nd fabricator early, which greatly speeds up the fabrication process. After making batteries with both fabricators, followed by a glass in one, Eclypsed dumps everything he has other than tools into a locker and heads to the kelp forest for what Eclypsed calls the biggest pain and suffering that this game has to offer: stalker teeth. So in Subnautica, there's 4 different visual variants of metal salvage that can spawn. They're all metal salvage, like they do the same thing. They appear in your inventory the same way and as the same type of item. They all serve as simply metal salvage in recipes and stuff, but they have different visual appearances for the sake of more visual variety. Whenever metal salvage spawns, it has a chance to be any one of these 4 varieties. Of these 4 versions of metal salvage, 3 are considered to be good metal salvage, while 1 is considered to be bad. Brief tangent, there's a fauna species called stalkers that spawn in the kelp forest. The speedrun community for this game refers to them as dogs for the sake of simplicity, so we'll call them dogs as well because I want to fit in with the cool kids. Dogs can pick up some items if they're laying on the ground, with there being a chance of them dropping a tooth if the item they pick up is metal salvage. There's only a 25% chance of them dropping a tooth whenever they pick up metal salvage, but there's actually more to it than that. This is where the differentiation between good and bad metal salvage comes in. The 25% chance to drop a tooth only applies when a dog picks up good metal salvage. It's a 0% chance they drop a tooth when they pick up bad salvage, which is actually a bug that's sometimes referred to as bugged metal. Earlier in the run, I mentioned that Eclypsed picked up some metal salvage in the kelp forest and to remember it for later, and the reason why he went out of his way to do that was because the metal salvage she picked up then was bad salvage. Eclypsed wanted to grab it then so that when he comes to the kelp forest now to try and get teeth from the dogs will only grab the good salvage that he drops and not any bad salvage that may have spawned in the area. So that's what this upcoming part is. Eclypsed will drop the 2 good salvages that he grabbed since leaving the base and leave the 1 bad salvage in his inventory. Also, something to note, good salvage and bad salvage look the same in your inventory, but they're stored in the order they're picked up, so that's how Eclypsed knows which is which when he goes to drop them. Getting dogs to drop teeth isn't as simple as just dropping the metal and letting the dogs do their thing though. Dogs don't pick up salvage for the sake of picking up salvage. They have a mechanic called nests, which are invisible points where they'll bring the metal salvage back to. Once the dogs bring the salvage back to their nest and the salvage is in the nest, then the dog won't pick it up again since it's where they want the salvage to be. This means that our job is to constantly be moving the metal salvage out of their nest so that the dogs will grab the metal again and have a chance of dropping a tooth. Nests are easily identified by just seeing where the dogs bring the metal. Something that can happen that we get in this run is something called a best dog. Best dogs are dogs whose nest point is above the seafloor, meaning that when they bring the salvage to their nest and drop it, the salvage falls back to the seafloor because gravity, surprisingly, is a thing that exists. The best dogs then pretty much just go into a loop of swimming up and down to pick up and drop the salvage, turning them into teeth farming machines. Another thing that can happen is that when a dog goes to pick up some metal from the ground, their mouth clips into the ground since they have these big old things for mouths, and if they drop a tooth while their mouth is clipping into the ground, then the tooth falls under the map into the void, lost to us forever. The last thing that's worth mentioning going into the tooth section is that a varying amount of dogs can spawn in the spot where we do this in the kelp forest. The most common number of dogs to spawn here is 2 or 3, but it's possible for none to spawn and also possible for more than 3 to spawn, although that happening is pretty unlikely in any given run. Obviously, more dogs is better since that makes for higher chances of a tooth being dropped, but if none spawn, then we have to swim around to a different area in the kelp forest to look for some. Back to the run, after he drops the good salvage, Eclypsed looks around a bit to see if any teeth have dropped and notices there are a couple cargo boxes nearby with fragments in them. When scanning the first one, he does the knife swinging animation and swaps to a scanner just to get the fun janky arm animation that doesn't do anything in this category other than entertain. These boxes have a small chance of spawning here and contain fragments for the mobile vehicle bay, which we need 3 fragments of for the blueprint. After grabbing 2 teeth into titanium, Eclypsed heads to the second box and scans that one real quick too. He then slices a creepvine to get 2 creepvine samples and loots 3 creepvine seed clusters from the same plant. Eclypsed is then going to chill for a bit, waiting for the final 2 teeth to drop, and after that he'll grab the metal salvage he dropped and head back to the flooded base. One of the dogs will be carrying a salvage when Eclypsed goes to collect them though, so he'll have to slice that dog to make it say, "Ow, why the fuck did you do that?" which causes it to open its mouth and drop the salvage. In the meantime, while this all unfolds, I'd just like to say I hope you're all doing well. If not, then I'd just like to remind you all, as always, that no feeling is final. I understand how at times it can feel like your life is controlled solely by thoughts of dread and despair, but I promise you, those feelings are not permanent. They do not define you, and they do not define the rest of your life. If things are difficult, then please take a step back and remind yourself that there is a tomorrow and you will be here for it. Back to the run, we're now at the base and beginning to dual wield our fabricators by using them to make a fiber mesh and convert all our metal salvage to titanium. After turning one creepvine cluster into silicone rubber and the other into lubricant, we unequip our standard O2 tank and combine it with 2 glass, 4 titanium, and a silver ore to make a high capacity O2 tank. We then make another lubricant and turn 10 titanium into an ingot, and again, it's worth mentioning that we're menuing and moving items so quickly thanks to the fact that the right mouse button is bound to scrolling up. Eclypsed will then perform a glitch called flare storage, where he'll click to throw a flare and click to open a locker immediately afterwards and exit the base as the flare is finished being thrown. This does pretty much the exact same thing as ghost storage and operates under the same principles. It's just we needed the flare to set it up since there isn't a delay with the lockers in this base like there is with the storage container in the life pod. After setting up flare storage, Eclypsed is now heading to a cave/geyser area where he'll do a bit more resource gathering. The top area here is filled with 8 guaranteed sandstone along with a few non-guaranteed limestone. Normally during the run, Eclypsed mentally keeps track of where he's at in the sandstone bucket, which in this case he started at 4 of 8, but because there's always 8 sandstone that spawn here, he knows that he'll be at 4 of 8 again once he grabs them all. Once he clears out this area, he's going to dive down deeper out of the area of guaranteed sandstone and into the area of advanced darkness, random sandstone. Eclypsed is looking in every nook and cranny for any sandstone he can find with the goal of completing this sandstone bucket, followed by completing 2 more full buckets, which adds up to 24 total sandstone on the tracker. Ignore the bucket number not resetting when it passes 8 for a bit. While down in these caves, we take pretty much a straight path through as we search for the sandstone. The spawn locations for harvesting nodes like sandstone are actually always the same, it's just a matter of whether or not they do spawn, so Eclypsed knows exactly where to look for the sandstone. Something worth noting are 2 benefits that Super Seaglide provides to us down here. One is that the squishy from Finding Nemo looking things called Drooping Stingers don't deal damage to us, and the other is that an aggressive fauna called Crashfish don't detect us. The reason for these are a bit complicated, so I've summarized them at the bottom of the description if you'd like to learn more. So when he exits the cave, Eclypsed heads to the surface to refresh his O2, and after activating flare storage to dump everything save 2 titaniums in our tools, we dive back down to collect some more sandstone and also look for some more metal salvage. So the reason why we're keeping track of how many sandstone we have with the goal of getting to 24 is that having 24 on the counter right now means we'll have just completed our 5th bucket and be just 1 gold away from the amount we need for the run. When the count reaches 24, Eclypsed keeps searching for sandstone until he gets a gold, which is guaranteed to be in the first 4 of the new bucket, but thankfully in this run he got it on the 2nd. Down here in the dark is a giant chunk of the original ship we were on that crashed, and by building a compartment that clips into the shipwreck gets deleted, letting us scan the fragment for the mobile vehicle bay that luckily spawned inside. This means we've now scanned all 3 fragments to unlock the blueprint for the MVB, since we scanned 2 earlier in the kelp forest. After grabbing another metal salvage, we're now on our way back to our base, which, speaking of, it's pretty dark in the game right now, but the kind of ghost compartment that isn't constructed serves as a nice indicator in the distance if we need any help finding our way. This trip to the base is when we're going to be making most of our items for the rest of the run. This will be pretty hard to follow with a lot happening super fast, but here's a quick summary. Eclypsed turns our metal salvage into titanium, along with turning 10 titanium into an ingot. We'll then make 5 copper wires, 4 of which will go into 4 computer chips. We'll then make 4 wiring kits, with 2 of them going into advanced wiring kits and 1 going into a rebreather. Eclypsed is also going to make a power cell, and something worth noting is that the power cell requires 2 batteries in the recipe, and our Seaglide has a battery in it that's been drained a bit from all our use. It isn't required for the batteries that go into the power cell to be full charge, so Eclypsed swaps the partially drained battery out of the Seaglide for a fresh one and uses the drained one in making the power cell. Sorry, I know this is a lot to keep track of, but this is a lot of what this run is, resource collection and management. Eclypsed actually considers all this crafting to be one of the more difficult parts of the run because of all the work that goes into inventory management and getting good at doing it quickly. On his way out, Eclypsed begins fabricating the mobile vehicle bay and deposited everything save tools, lubricant, and table coral, marking the end of the resource gathering and heavy crafting stages of the run. We're now on our way to the main wreckage of the Aurora, the ship that we were on that crashed on the planet, and heading there this early in the game is ill-advised since the Aurora is just spewing radiation into the ocean as if it were owned by BP. On his way there, Eclypsed will grab a metal salvage and scan a fragment of the engine of something called the Cyclops. The Cyclops is a giant submarine that we have to build for the sole purpose of being able to use a unique fabricator inside the Cyclops to build a required item, and that fabricator is the only place you can do that. The Cyclops is split into 3 parts, the engine, the bridge, and the hull, with each section requiring 3 fragments to get the blueprint for. Engine and bridge fragments can be found randomly around the Aurora, so health permitting, you should scan one if you see one, but we'll mainly be getting the fragments in another place later. After scanning the fragment, Eclypsed will swim into a gap in the Aurora's model to go inside of the ship, which isn't intended, but like the gap is there and you can enter it. Normally you have to play the game for almost an hour until you're able to enter the Aurora, but this expedites the process a bit. After swimming in the dark for a bit, which by the way, a lot of this run is done in the dark, Eclypsed will look up in a specific spot, hold space, and jump straight through the floor to enter the Aurora proper. This glitch is actually one of the 2 reasons why he plays on the September 2018 patch, since jumping through the floor was patched out. Inside, he enters the code to open the captain's quarters, which is a code that doesn't change across playthroughs, then jumps in some fire and electricity to lower his health a little as the door opens, grabs a blueprint inside, and hops back in the fire and electricity to die and spawn back at his base. Back at the base, Eclypsed will pick up the mobile vehicle bay from the fabricator along with a bunch of other items from storage. He'll then make a titanium ingot, drop off the MVB in a locker, and make sure he has 2 quartz, 2 lead, 5 titanium, 2 ingots, a lubricant, and a table coral in his inventory before setting up flare storage and leaving the base. So when he leaves the base, Eclypsed will partially deconstruct one of the solar panels to just under 20%, netting him a handful of resources from it which he needs for where he's going. Earlier I mentioned that Eclypsed made a mental note about which solar panel he constructed second, and it's for this exact moment. The way solar panels work in this game is they generate power during the day, and then that power is stored in it like a battery with a max capacity of 75 power. Anytime something is made in the base, it costs 5 power, and power is drawn from the solar panel. When you have multiple solar panels, the game prioritizes drawing power from the one you built first. Through all the crafting we've done so far, we've entirely drained the first solar panel we built and drained the second one down to 14 power, which is all the power we have left at the moment. Solar panels only generate energy when they're fully constructed, but if the solar panel has power stored when it's partially deconstructed, that power will still be there and accessible. It's just that more won't be generated until construction is complete. We're about to go off and do some tasks that will take some time, and while we do them, enough time will pass for it to become day again and the solar panels to begin soaking up charge again. We obviously want to maximize the amount of power we have later in the run, but realistically we're able to get by with one solar panel soaking up energy at this point. We still want to get as much power as possible though, even with just one soaking up the sun, which is why we make sure that we leave the fully drained solar panel constructed so that we can potentially end up with 89 power total instead of 75 if we left the other one constructed. After the solar panels, Eclypsed begins making his way across the map and is going to harvest a hoverfish and some eye stalk seeds, then make his way towards an island with a mountain on it. It's around now we should probably talk spoilers real quick, so if you don't want to hear them, mute the video until this image of a submarine goes away. Alright. 3, 2, and 1. So the reason why we crash landed here was because the Aurora was shot down by a giant gun. This whole planet is under quarantine because of a disease here, and some past civilization on this planet decided the best way to make sure the disease never spread anywhere else was to build a giant gun that shoots down anything entering or exiting the planet. Our end goal for the run is to build a rocket and leave, with the rocket blueprints being what we got from the captain's quarters in the Aurora, but before we can do that, we have to both disable the gun and find a cure for the disease. On our to-do list, disabling the gun is the line with the gun emoji, finding the cure is the line with the test tube, and leaving the planet is the one that says, escape the planet. So yeah, that's what those mean. So right now, we're on our way to do the tasks that involve the woman making the X-arms and the detective, and in a second, Eclypsed will pick up a tablet, which is a storyline item, and the first time you pick up a tablet, there's an animation where you hold it up to your face. We're going to do something called fish skip though, where we'll hold the hoverfish in our hand and then in rapid succession, drop the fish, swap to our Seaglide, and interact with the tablet. This skips the tablet animation and saves around 2 seconds or so and can be done with any fish. Also, Eclypsed grabbed a hoverfish earlier just because it was nearby, and they're also his favorite fish in the game. We're now going to do a bit more resource collection, looking specifically for lithium, which we have none of, and more gold, since those two, along with titanium, are the main resources we haven't finished collecting yet. In this area, lithium spawns straight up similar to quartz, and there's another resource bucket here, which is the shale outcrop. Shale buckets are a bit more complicated than the 2 buckets we've covered so far, with the bucket size being 200. Yes, that is correct, 200. Rather than a detailed breakdown of how this bucket works, here's the distribution for the drops. Before continuing with his resource collection quest, Eclypsed stops to make a quick base in a specific spot using the resources he brought with him from the last base, and also starts construction of an extra compartment to eat up a titanium to free up inventory space. So something about the Seaglide is that it can slightly clip out of bounds, and here Eclypsed uses that to his advantage to be able to interact with and grab another purple tablet that's sitting out of bounds here for some reason. Using the Seaglide to slightly poke our head out of bounds will happen again later in the run. We're about to break open a few more shale and get all the gold we need, and after that, Eclypsed is solely going to pick up lithium on its own rather than using shale to try and get it to avoid filling our inventory with useless diamond. Take that, De Beers. So we're now approaching a crash area that contains some fragments, and right here Eclypsed scans our second engine fragment for the Cyclops. In the crash area proper, the main thing he's looking for is another engine fragment since those spawn here, as well as fragments for the moon pool. The moon pool is kinda like a dock and charging station that we can build, but we won't be using it for those purposes in this run. Instead, we'll be using it for other things. Glitches. We'll be using the moon pool for glitches. After scanning the 2 moon pool fragments and the final Cyclops engine fragment, we're off again to scavenge lithium. This whole stretch of the run is actually really tight on timing as our oxygen is running pretty low, but luckily Eclypsed watched that one David Blaine TED Talk when learning the run, so he was able to hold his breath long enough to do it all. And also he's good at the game and is able to do it all quickly enough to not run out of breath, that too, but mainly the TED Talk thing. Like when Eclypsed and I had our call to go over the run, he talked about that TED Talk for like 4.5 hours and then pulled up the video of the speedrun, set the playback speed to double, and blasted through the rest of the info. So as soon as Eclypsed saw the color of the water on the horizon have a hint of pink indicating him entering a different biome, he activated flare storage and deposited everything other than his tools, the stuff he had when he left the base, one of the tablets, and one of the golds that he picked up, and also used the moment to grab the mobile vehicle bay from storage. He then sliced a bulbush and tree mushroom for samples, and will now go out of bounds for the first time by performing an MVB clip where he wedges himself in this overhang, aims at a specific spot, deploys the MVB, and climbs on it as it jiggles and bounces around, putting him out of bounds. After grabbing the MVB for future use, we dive straight down with the reason for going out of bounds being to have a more direct path to the Lost River biome. If we hadn't gone out of bounds, then we'd have to go through a bunch of winding caves to get here, and that sounds exhausting, fuck that. Getting back in bounds is super simple, with us just needing to swim straight through the one-way collision of the rocks, and once we do that, Eclypsed will slice a ghostweed to get a seed. He'll then dive down into the nearby brine to both intentionally lower his health to about 60% and also see if any crystalline sulfur spawns, since we need some, but unfortunately none did. He then waves hello to Casper, a leviathan that's above us, before he dives down again to enter a new biome, the inactive lava zone. Down here, Eclypsed is going to be swimming around and scanning all the rock surfaces to look specifically for nickel ore, which looks kinda like a tiny potato. We only need to get 3 of them, but they are pretty sparse down here, which isn't super ideal since we constantly take little ticks of damage due to how hot the water is. Nickel is both super hard to spot and very easy to mistake for other objects, so it's just a perfect mess for the fact we're in a place that damages us just for being here. Eclypsed spots a nickel from afar here, and with that single action, he made me consider calling my eye doctor about scheduling an exam. Luckily, the second nickel is nearby, but the third one is a bit farther and requires additional scanning of the area and venturing down a shelf. Once he finds the third nickel, Eclypsed begins heading across the area, being sure to wave hello to Kevin in the process. Kevin is a sea dragon leviathan, and he doesn't bother us in this run, but from what I'm told, he has a big appetite for runners of the glitchless category. Also, I'm just being told these names for the leviathans, I'm not making them up. When we enter this cave to an alien base, Eclypsed immediately grabs a couple kyanite along with a crystalline sulfur, both of which we need 4 of. There's some additional kyanite to the left we just skipped, and we did so because we're really low on oxygen and need to get to a specific point quickly, so we're only grabbing stuff that's on the way. When he enters this big area, Eclypsed swims up to and into the alien base that's here, giving him a quick burst of oxygen, but also removing Super Seaglide since he left the water momentarily. This is where we build our moon pool, which we'll enter real quick to set our spawn to, and it'll begin to flood on its own since it automatically takes structural damage when built at depths of over 1100 meters. Eclypsed is now running through this alien base where he leaps to a lower floor as a shortcut and also to take intentional damage to lower his health as much as possible. Down here, he picks up this green ion cube and then uses the tablet in his inventory to open the force field looking gate. In here, he does some fancy little hops to quickly reach a terminal that he'll interact with to retrieve a blueprint, and then hop off the walkway to take enough fall damage to kill himself, causing him to respawn back in the moon pool. Unlike with our other base that requires us to deconstruct and reconstruct a hatch to reobtain Super Seaglide, all you have to do with the moon pool is spawn in a flooded one to get Super Seaglide, so after doing that, we re-enter the water and deconstruct the moon pool for the resources. Eclypsed is going to perform another MVB clip in a specific spot, and the exact place where he does this clip is dependent on where we originally spawned and built our main base, which again in this run is referred to as Clip A. If we had spawned in the other area that's good for high level runs that's referred to as Clip C, we would be performing this clip in a different spot for reasons that will be apparent in a moment. So Subnautica, like many games, renders things that are close to you but not far away. There is an exception to this though. MVBs while they're in the water, they always stay rendered in. The MVB has inflatables on it, so it wants to float to the surface, so by leaving the MVB where we perform the clip and then swimming away to do other stuff, the terrain above the MVB will unload from us moving away from it, and the MVB will float all the way to the surface. The incredible thing about this exact spot where we are is that pretty much exactly above us, all the way at the top, is the main base that we built. Like seriously, it's straight above us and the MVB will float all the way up to it. This is why if we had spawned in the Clip C area, we would do this clip somewhere else, because Clip C spawn runs have us building our first base in a different location. Also addressing the elephant in the room, yes, there was a Clip B at one point, but it was so bad that no one does runs with it anymore.
Adopting a pet or anthropomorphizing an inanimate object.
Now that he's out of bounds, Eclypsed is heading down and looking specifically for his 2 other crystalline sulfur since this is the place to get it. You can pick up the sulfur while you're out of bounds, but you have to be careful to not get too close to the sulfur and accidentally clip back inbounds. After he grabs the last sulfur in a moment, he'll then dive down deeper on his way to the main alien base we're going to. On our way down, we get a weird transmission thing from a leviathan who wants to help us complete one of our main tasks, the one with the detective emoji. After the scene from the found footage movie ends and we get back in bounds, we're going to slash a sea crown to get a seed of it, as well as grab another ion cube that's down here. So normally when you enter this area for the first time, there's a big cutscene animation thing that plays out, but because we entered this area via out of bounds, we skip the trigger for it and it doesn't play, and the leviathan that sent the transmission to us stays in a power pose the whole time. After activating the first pedestal with an ion cube, Eclypsed then uses the Seaglide to poke his head out of bounds into some sand to interact with a second pedestal. Normally the Leviathan blows the sand away for us, but she's busy right now. After the animation plays out, we teleport back to a set location, which is actually right next to the small makeshift base we made recently. There, Eclypsed will deconstruct the partially built compartment to get the titanium back, then build a fabricator inside the actual base. He'll then use all the seeds and samples he's collected from plants to make an object called hatching enzymes that he just got the recipe for from activating the portal with the ion cube. He'll then deconstruct the fabricator he just built along with the hatch to get back the resources from them, but doing this with the hatch also makes this base not a complete one, so the next time we die, we'll spawn back at the life pod. And yeah, that's right, the whole purpose of this base and collecting all those samples was to make one item. Eclypsed then opens his PDA right before entering the portal, letting him menu while in the teleporting cutscene that brings us back down to the pedestal Leviathan area. In the menu, he unequips his O2 tank and drops his quartz and table coral since he no longer needs them. When the teleportation finishes, he swims forward and interacts with the pedestal ahead to use the hatching enzymes, which causes a bunch of baby Leviathans to hatch. In a move antithetical to the tone of this channel, we actually won't be watching the miracle of life, choosing to instead immediately turn around and get our booties back to the teleporter to head back to the surface. When we finish teleporting back to the makeshift base area, somehow the baby Leviathans will have beaten us up there, with them having begun to spawn these orangish yellowish enzyme bubbles around the map periodically. Eclypsed then does something called Cure Clip, where he pushes a bubble up against the rock wall, positions himself to be above and slightly behind it while facing away from the wall, then interacts with the bubble, which forces him to be eye level with it and puts him out of bounds. Interacting with the enzyme bubble plays out an animation where it gets absorbed into us, which crosses off one of the items on our checklist. Now that we're out of bounds, we're going to swim along the side of a huge structure called the Quarantine Enforcement Platform, QEP for short, and you'll notice our O2 is getting low. This is intentional and part of an upcoming glitch called QEP Quick Death, which Eclypsed considers to be the hardest glitch in the run. So like I said a few moments ago, Eclypsed unequipped his O2 tank, and him doing that is considered to be the beginning of the QEP Quick Death process. His O2 level hits 0 here, so Eclypsed re-equips his O2 tank. This brings his O2 level back up to 84, but all this air is in the tank, and if the tank is unequipped again, he'll go back down to 0. Eclypsed will then swim up to a pedestal that he needs to interact with to disable the QEP and complete a task on our to-do list. Before interacting with the pedestal though, Eclypsed is going to pull up his PDA. The moment after he clicks to pull it up, he has a small window where he's able to interact with the pedestal, which he'll do. This causes the animation of interacting with the pedestal to play out while he has his PDA out, waving all about for the world to see, with the PDA actually still being interactable. At the end of the interaction animation, a grinding noise will play, which indicates the storyline being updated based on what we just did. Our goal with this glitch is to interact with our waving about PDA to unequip our O2 tank and time it in a way where we die right after the storyline updates, which warps us back to our life pod and skips a ton of swimming. To do this, Eclypsed will position his cursor in a very specific spot right after initiating the animation, then grab the O2 tank off its equipped location in the PDA and move his cursor to an exact spot while holding onto the O2 tank. Eclypsed will hold the tank in that spot and wait for the animation to play out, and at a specific point, his cursor in the tank will be directly over his inventory, at which point he'll let go of the tank to take it off. Technically, he can just click on the O2 tank initially to unequip it, but if he did that, then the tank would be unequipped too soon and he'd die before the storyline gets updated. Unequipping the tank at the right time causes us to die right after the storyline updates, respawning us back in our life pod and overall saving somewhere between 10 and 20 seconds. Alright, let's see this all in real time.
Scans indicate the facility's control room lies beyond this doorway. Oxygen.
Because we die with our PDA open, that means it'll still be open when we spawn back in, so when we do, Eclypsed menus in the darkness to re-equip the O2 tank before setting off back towards our main base. When we get there, we'll get to work immediately by grabbing supplies from our lockers, including the other purple tablet, and also turn 3 glass and 3 stalker teeth into 3 enameled glass. Those will be going into making the Cyclops. Before he leaves, Eclypsed is going to deconstruct and reconstruct the hatch real quick to regain Super Seaglide, and then set up flare storage as he heads out. Outside the base, Eclypsed begins looking around for an extra metal salvage to grab for the titanium it provides, as well as a peeper to grab to perform another fish skip with. Peepers can be hard to wrap your hands around. Trust me, I've handled my fair share of peepers in my life, but once he finally gets a hold of one, Eclypsed begins making a straight line towards the sparse reef biome. It takes a hot second to swim there, so don't mind me just fast forwarding a little bit here. When he arrives, Eclypsed quickly grabs a salt deposit, 2 gel sacks, and 2 rubies. Once we collect all of those, we'll head up and over to another little cave system where there's a cache located. Eclypsed is going to interact with the pedestal outside of the cache to use up his last purple tablet, which opens up the vault for us. Inside are a handful of ion cubes, which we'll grab 4 of to complete our ion cube collection for the run. We then work our way out of these caves, taking a left, then a right, then a left, which leads us to a big wreck on the ocean floor. Eclypsed is going to build a compartment clipping into the wreck to despawn it like we did with the wreck earlier, and luckily at this wreck we can find all the remaining fragments we need for the Cyclops. Additionally, the blueprint for the one item that we specifically need to make inside of the Cyclops is located here as well. We need to interact with the data box to get it, and we perform fish skip when doing so by dropping our peeper, but this time swapping to our scanner instead of the Seaglide, then interacting with the data box. This lets us scan a nearby fragment while inspecting the blueprint we just got, which is for the Cyclops shield generator. After doing this and scanning 2 whole fragments, we then look around for our last fragment, which is for the bridge of the Cyclops, which we find down on the ground next to the wreck. After scanning it, we'll then head into a nearby cave where we'll grab 3 deep shrooms. Grabbing the shrooms will be immediately followed by us activating flare storage to deposit any new items we've picked up so that they aren't lost when we die in a moment. We then proceed to knife the mushrooms to get them to explode in our face, killing us and warping us back to our base. When he spawns, Eclypsed will right away grab the metal salvage from storage and make it into titanium, then pick up the blinding flare so he doesn't have to look at it. Him making this titanium marks the end of our titanium and resource collection for the run. He then picks up glass, copper wire, and computer chips from storage while dropping off everything he doesn't need. We then head outside and begin constructing a new base that we make sure is far enough away from the other one we just exited so that the new one doesn't snap into place on the first base's construction grid. This is to set up what's probably the weirdest glitch in this run, the item dupe. After making 2 eye compartments near each other, Eclypsed then partially constructs a window on the higher up eye compartment. For some reason, the game thinks that this window is built on the lower eye compartment, so Eclypsed is able to fully deconstruct the compartment that the window is on, causing the partially constructed window to just float there. Eclypsed will then build an L compartment in the location of the compartment he deconstructed, followed by completing construction of the window. The game doesn't like this very much since windows are not supposed to be placeable on L compartments, and it makes the game think that we're building 2 bases whenever we finish constructing an object. By this I mean that whenever construction is completed on something on this base's construction grid, 2 of the constructed objects are built in the same place instead of 1, with resources only being expended for the completion of 1. In order to build the Cyclops and everything else to end the run, we need 9 titanium ingots, which is a lot of titanium to go out and collect, so instead, Eclypsed will build 1 moon pool. Moon pools require 2 ingots to build, and since we just set up the item dupe glitch, then after expending 2 ingots to build a moon pool, there will be 2 fully constructed moon pools in place. Eclypsed will then fully deconstruct one of the 2 moon pools, giving him back all the resources that went into it, including 2 titanium ingots. He'll then quickly partially deconstruct the moon pool and reconstruct it, with the completion of construction producing 2 moon pools in place again. Eclypsed will then fully deconstruct the second moon pool to get 2 more titanium ingots, bringing him up to 4 total. Eclypsed repeats the process of deconstructing and reconstructing the moon pool to dupe it, and deconstructing the duped moon pool until he has 8 ingots, at which point he then partially deconstructs the original moon pool until it gives him back an ingot, bringing him to 9 ingots total, which is exactly how many he needs. After clearing up some inventory space, he then grabs the mobile vehicle bay dead in front of him that's finally made its way all the way up to the surface. He redeploys it in a specific spot where there's sufficient depth to build the big structure we need to make to finish the run, which is the Neptune launch platform. After placing the launch pad's location, we head back to the base and grab a ton of lithium from storage and use them with our titanium ingots to make 6 plasteel ingots. While in here, Eclypsed has to deconstruct and reconstruct the hatch to regain Super Seaglide since he lost it when he climbed the MVB to make the launch platform. Once he heads outside the base in a moment, he's going to pick up the mobile vehicle bay to adjust its position slightly since he wants to make the Cyclops somewhere else in an exact spot. He'll then dolphin dive onto the launch platform and initiate construction for the gantry of the rocket. That's the big overhead crane thingy. Dolphin diving onto the launch platform loses his Super Seaglide again, and it's pretty annoying and slow to repeatedly lose it during this segment. This is why he deploys his MVB in this exact spot and begins construction of the Cyclops overhead before heading back to the base to grab and make more items. It'll be clear why this helps not lose Super Seaglide in a moment. On the list for things to do in the base right now are to reacquire Super Seaglide by doing the hatch thing, and also to make and grab the final plasteel ingot, another enameled glass, as well as using some rubies to make aerogel and ion cubes to make ion batteries. By the time we head back out of the base, the Cyclops will have completed construction, causing it to hang suspended in the air until we swim close enough, at which point it'll drop from the sky. With where Eclypsed positioned it, it lands partially on the platform, tilting half of it underwater. This way we no longer lose Super Seaglide when going to make rocket sections. The Cyclops landing on the platform and tilting it down into the water is actually the second reason why we play on the September 2018 patch, since on some later patches it doesn't lower the platform like this. We're now on our base one final time to craft some ion power cells and polyaniline, and after beginning the final crafting, we head outside and sit alongside the base since you can actually grab items from outside and save a small bit of time. We're then going to initiate the penultimate construction on the platform, then rather than enter the Cyclops the normal way, Eclypsed clips his head into the side of the sub and interacts with the ladder from there to get inside. This is called Text Clip and it saves no time. Eclypsed just likes doing it for fun. Inside the Cyclops, we steal a power cell and then combine it with an advanced wiring kit and the polyaniline to create the Cyclops shield generator. That one damned item we need that if we didn't need to make the Cyclops to get, it'd save like 10 minutes overall. Outside, we just need to wait around to begin the final construction on the rocket. Eclypsed will then go in back of the rocket and ride the elevator up, and while he does, it's important to note that he made sure he still has his 2 flares for this part. There's 3 levers inside the rocket that need to be pulled, but they all have animations to them, but by doing the same thing as flare storage where he goes to throw the flare, then interacts with the lever, the animation for each of them is skipped. It looks like he has 3 flares at this part, but he only has 2 and is able to pick them up practically as soon as he throws them by just scrolling. After climbing this ladder, there's 2 more consoles we need to interact with, but unfortunately you can't flare skip them, so we just have to do them normally. Eclypsed will then interact with the time capsule and write a little message for the viewers at home and dump all his junk into the capsule for fun. This isn't something you normally do in the run, but Eclypsed decided to do it for the special occasion. While Eclypsed does this monitor and then types out the message, real quick before the run ends, thank you so much to everyone who supports the channel on Patreon. Your support is so entirely unnecessary, but it is so appreciated and helps keep the channel afloat. If you'd like to throw in as little as $1 a month to help with the channel, you get access to videos early as well as updates on videos as they're being made, and also occasional bonus content like Fanfiction Fridays or voting on runs to be covered in future videos. This Subnautica run was actually chosen and voted for by the patrons, so shout out to them for the awesome choice. Again, supporting the channel monetarily is entirely unnecessary, but it helps a ton and is greatly appreciated. So after typing out the message, Eclypsed will then sit down in Kirk's chair to initiate the rocket's launch, with the run officially ending on the launch of the rocket. Because we beat the game so quickly, the game has a huge backlog of dialogue that it needs to get through that it spams out at us that would have been doled out over the next hour of playtime or so. But yeah, that about wraps up the run. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much on behalf of both myself and Eclypsed, and an enormous thank you specifically to Eclypsed for helping make this video possible. Eclypsed provided me with so much valuable info when going over the run with me that I truly don't feel I could have made the video without him. Plus I got to hear all about David Blaine, which was a blast from the past. Please be sure to check out Eclypsed's Twitch and YouTube. They're both linked in the description and are loaded with more Subnautica content. And if you'd like to learn more about Subnautica speedruns or check out other categories, then be sure to head on over to speedrun.com and use that search bar. And lastly, as always, check out the Tomato Anus Discord server. The community there are a bunch of considerate people who love to chat about just about anything and are always welcoming of new faces. That's all for this video though. This was an any% survival glitched speedrun of Subnautica. I've been Tomato Anus, and I hope you have an above average day.